Okay, so part 4, we're going to start going into what the difference of works of the law versus obeying God and doing his will is. And so for the works of the law, we're going to look into the Pharisees. Okay, and for this, we're going to be looking into Matthew 23, because Jesus explains to us in Matthew 23 that the Pharisees went through the actions, but they didn't have a change of heart, okay? And they didn't believe on Jesus Christ. Remember, the Pharisees didn't believe Jesus was the Christ. In fact, they spoke against him and killed him, right? And they didn't change their heart. They just went through the motions of what God had commanded them to do. So Matthew 23, we're first going to be looking through verses 1 through 5, 13 through 15, and 25 through 27. And the reason why it's split up like this is because of what each of those sections talk about. So the first one is they're hypocrites. Okay, so those talk about how hypocritical they are. So Jesus tells us to observe what they do, but do not follow their action. Do what they say, but do not do as they do. Does that sound familiar to you? We heard that a lot from our parents, right? Do as we say, don't do as we do. Little hypocritical. So why does Jesus tell us that? It's because the Pharisees don't practice what they preach. And they end up putting heavier burdens on other people's backs than what they are willing to bear. So they'll tell you, oh, go do these special things for God. Go do this for God. But they're not willing to do it themselves. It's too much work. They don't do it themselves. And that was in verse 1 through 5. So in verse 13 through 15, Jesus calls them hypocrites. And that the Pharisees keep people from the kingdom as they are not going to the kingdom. So these hypocrites keep people from being able to go into the kingdom of God, just as they are not going into the kingdom of God. They make I don't know how to say the word. I'm sorry. I'll post it up here. Or it means to convert people into their ways and make these converts twice the child of hell. So it means the Pharisees are already going to hell, but they make these people worse than they are. These people end up, their actions, everything, they make them worse and teach them to be worse. Okay, so in verses 25 through 27, Jesus explains how the Pharisees make themselves look good on the outside, but their hearts are full of hypocrisy and sin, okay? He tells them to clean up what's on the inside first so that the outside would truly be clean. So we're going to move on to verses 5 and 23. So in verse 5, Jesus tells us that they love to do all their deeds in front of others. They love making their outward appearance great, and being praised and recognized as great among the people. Luke 18:10 backs this up, as the Pharisees consider himself better for going through the motions, but has not humbled themselves. So in verse 23, Jesus tells them that they went through the proper motions, but neglected the most important part. Sorry, Luke 10 backs up this verse 23. Okay, but neglects the most important part, the condition of the heart. He tells them that they should have done their tithes, meaning they follow the law, but to do so without neglecting cleaning up their heart. Now pay attention to that, because that's huge. Remember, Jesus did not come to abolish or get rid of the law, but rather to do it perfectly, because we could not. Okay, so he did it perfectly. He was that ultimate blood sacrifice, so that if we messed up in obedience, that we could still come to God. Okay, we could find grace, we could find mercy, but he did not get rid of the law, he just fulfilled it. So it's not that we don't have parts of the law that, we do have parts of the law that we still follow, okay? But once again, if we mess up, we have grace and mercy behind it, because Jesus already did it perfectly for us and was that ultimate blood sacrifice at the end. Okay, so Jesus expected them to still do what they were doing, just with a better condition of the heart. Okay, they didn't have the proper heart towards it, but they were still supposed to be following that law. The difference is that it's a condition of the heart, okay? Are you wanting to obey God because you love him, or simply because you think going through the motions will save you? Because Pharisees, they were ugly on the inside. They did not love Jesus. They did not want to clean themselves up at all. They just wanted to go through the motions to be saved. Whereas somebody who truly loves God will do it because they love him. Okay. So like when you are submitted to a husband as a wife, or husband, or as a husband to a wife. Okay. If they ask you to do something, you should do it because you love them, not because you feel obligated to do it. Okay. You should do it out of love for you, love for your spouse. Okay. So go on to part 5, and it talks about obeying and following God's voice.